The Dorset Theatre Festival is off to a flying start in its 40th anniversary season, having just finished a hugely successful run of a new play featuring Tyne and Tim Daly of Broadway and television fame. They starred in a world premiere production of Downstairs, a new play by acclaimed playwright and part-time local resident Teresa Rebeck. Now it's on to a new adaptation of a Sherlock Holmes drama titled Baskerville, drawn from the original story written by Holmes's creator, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, in The Hound of the Baskervilles. The Theatre Festival's artistic director, Deanna Janis, tells us a little bit about the story.
I was really excited about the whole season. It came together in a really nice way. We're doing a regional premiere, again, of Ken Ludwig's adaptation of The Hound of the Baskervilles, which is a huge, rollicking, fun, five actors playing, 18 or more characters. It's zany and fun, and we're excited because when we auditioned in New York, we saw everyone you could imagine for Sherlock, male and female, but we ended up casting a fantastically gifted actress in the role of Sherlock. So we're really thrilled with that, and I think the audiences are going to find it quite fun.
David Quay will be playing Dr. Watson to Sherlock. He talked with us about how playing that role opposite a female Sherlock Holmes will be like.
Well, that's an interesting question because it's funny actually. Liz is just such a great performer. We honestly don't think too much about her being a woman or no. She's just playing this role. One of the things about this whole production and the way that it's written is it allows for a lot of comedy, and so it is the story of the Hound of the Baskervilles, but it's set inside this crazy world where Watson and Holmes are each played by a single actor, but then three other actors play every single other part in the show. So there's this kind of zaniness to it that actually is a pretty awesome counterpoint to some of the darkness and kind of the ghost story or the monster story that's also a component and that we're trying to offer with integrity as well.
And there's more to come after that, says Deanna Janis.
The next thing that we're doing, which I'm personally just so excited, I don't know if you saw The Whipping Man, the play that was set in the Civil War. We did it a few years ago. It was a play by Matthew Lopez, who is a very, wonderful national playwright, also writes for television. And it was a very moving play. It was one of our most successful productions, actually. And he has a new play called The Legend of Georgia McBride, which is one of the top produced plays nationally right now. It's a kind of a breakout hit because it's a really feel-good play. It's such a crowd pleaser. But it tells the story of a young Elvis impersonator in rural Florida, a place a lot like Vermont. And the owner of his club they're not making any money. So he decides he's going to get rid of the Elvis impersonation act and bring in a drag act. So these drag artists show up, and one night he ends up he gets convinced to go on because one of them gets sick or can't perform. And he really basically learns how to do drag. And he's a young guy with a wife who's about to have a baby, really not familiar with the world that he is now a part of. And it is funny and very moving, and it's almost kind of like a musical without the music. All the acts are performed, so you see all of the actual performances of the show throughout. It's going to be really pretty fabulous, and we're really excited about bringing that in.
The festival has a rich history spanning its 4 decades, and former set designer Bill Opperly recalls the early days and how the festival was started.
Well, I first came to Dorset in 1981 and was hired by John Nessavera and Jill Charles, so I missed the first, 3 years of the theater festival. John Nessavera and Jill Charles actually started the Dorset Theater Festival. They were interns and apprentices with Pat and Fred Carmichael, who ran the summer theater before them. In the transition, when John and Jill took it over, there was 1 year where it went from being a profit-making theater to a nonprofit moving theater, which John created, a nonprofit theater, and it was known as the Harlequin Players. And then the following year, the Dorset Theater Festival started. So that was in, I guess, 1976 or 77. And like I said, I arrived in 1981 and designed with them from 1981 to 2006. So during that time, I garnered a lot of information about the history, of the festival. But it was John and Jill who started it and ran it, and John continued until 2006, I guess it was, or 7, and Jill passed away in 2001 or 2, and that's when I went from being the resident set designer to being an associate artistic director. Well, the biggest change probably was the, John's dream of renovating the theater, which he and Jill, it was their passion to make that happen. So that was probably the biggest change, and that was toward the end of my time there. I think I was only did maybe 12 or 14 shows in the new building, as we call it. But that was probably the biggest change. But we had an apprentice company, we had an equity company, we had a non-equity company that all worked together. So Jill was very involved with training programs for young people, and that was a real focus of the festival at that time as well.
Today, the Theater Festival is branching out further, with readings of new plays and workshops among them. Last year, the Theater Festival joined forces with the Weston Theater and the Northern Stage Playhouse from White River Junction to produce a 3-part series of the play Norman Conquests. Dina discussed the impact of that with us.
Well, yeah, it's really, it's amazing actually on the 40th that, we've been thinking so much about kind of where we are and where we've been and where we're going. And it was in one of the projects we did this year for our 40th was working with the Dorset Historical Society. We pulled all these amazing photographs from the past, really when they first built the barn and all of those periods of time, and some of the really interesting shots of old productions and people that started the festival 40 years ago. And I think that, for me, when I came on board, I felt like I was very fortunate to inherit a festival with an amazing legacy that was really struggling, literally, to keep the doors open at that point. And so we began to kind of build forward by trying to engage the community. We brought in different kind of programming, a lot of new play premieres. Right away, we started doing a lot of new play development and bringing playwrights in, which brings actors in with the projects that they're writing. And then that sort of leads to a certain tier level of designers and directors that are also interested in coming in. So I think over the past 7 years, we've been doing this, new play development, retreats, premieres, regional premieres, and it feels like this is really the year where that narrative has just sort of finally hit the ethos. People in the region, I think, are more aware of the fact that we're doing these interesting things here, bringing in these sort of world-class performers or different artists, both actors, designers, directors, and playwrights. But it's also expanded out. So what we're finding right now, which has been exciting, is that we're getting people from all over the place coming, sort of more of a destination theater, which was what I always was hoping we could do, because I think we would need to do that to be sustainable. When they expanded the theater, it went from 100 to 300 seats. So, in order to really be sustainable, you need to have an expanded audience reach. And we have been finding that. It's been exciting. Someone from the Wilburton posted one of their patrons on Facebook just yesterday that they were interviewing, and she had come all the way from Missouri just to come to the Dorset Theater Festival. And I was like, oh wow, well that's fabulous, because that's the story that we're hoping we can create. So I think that we've definitely seen a change in being more of a local, venerable institution to a more nationally recognized professional destination for artists as well as audiences, and that's kind of cool.
For the GNET TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.